Are we live? Welcome to Creature Guide Live Daily News. For those of you that don't know, my name is Ethan. Today we're going over a wide range of different current animal news from around the world. So, going over rhinos, what's happening with certain cougar populations, as well as red deer and moose. We're streaming on both Rumble, YouTube, and Kick. From news.mongabay.com. Decades after poaching drove them extinct, rhinos are back in the wild in Uganda. It seems to be that they released a white rhino. White rhinos, however, are not native to Uganda or even indigenous to the region. In fact, they're only indigenous to different parts of southern sub Saharan Africa, whereas Uganda is located over amidst central eastern Africa. So just west of Kenya and east of the Democratic Republic of the Congo and south of South Sudan. But you would have had black rhinos historically roaming the country, but not white rhinos. In fact, black rhinos have probably the largest home range of any species of rhino today. I guess you'd have to travel as far back as to the Ice Age or the Pleistocene epoch over 12,000 years ago to come into contact with a species of rhino that had a larger home range than the black rhino of today, which would probably be certain species of woolly rhino over in different parts of Eurasia and possibly even Alaska and the Yukon of Canada. So, guess he's just being acclimated. Seems to be they also labeled him with a certain number. Guess he's got a tag. I'm not sure what this pink is. That a tranquilizer dart? Oh, okay. He just hit him. Maybe it's to get him to wake up. Usually they manually do that though. Yep, there's the dart. So, 43 years after the last free ranging rhinos were seen in the country, the Uganda Wildlife Authority has welcomed four southern white rhinos to Kadipo Valley National Park in the country's north from a breeding sanctuary designed for the species in a reintroduction. So, I'm guessing they might be referring to black rhinos, unless back in the 80s you had it where there were white rhinos that had been introduced to Uganda, probably to help mitigate the poaching on the species, considering certain areas of South Africa where the core of the population is for white rhinos um, can have worse instances with poaching. We're glad and privileged to be taking back rhinos, much as it is a different subspecies from that used to exist. No, it's a completely different species that used to be over here in this part of Africa. It's actually a distinct genus as well, the white rhino Ceratotherium, whereas the black rhino, I believe, is Rhinus, because the northern white rhino is the one which used to exist there but was hunted to extinction. Okay, that wasn't hitting me. If you are referring to specifically the white rhino, then yes, the northern white rhino had a much more northern range compared to the southern white rhino subspecies of white rhino. UWA Executive Director James Musanguzi said at the Zaiwa Sanctuary on March 17th. According to the Wildlife Authority, a total of 8 rhinos will be released in the park by May this year. Hopefully, with this reintroduction, we don't have occur like with what happened with certain reintroductions of black rhinos over in, I believe, Chad a few years back. Though there was also um, I guess, a re-release with other black rhino individuals, but they were acclimated to the area and weren't just immediately released into the wild. Also during the dry season. In fact, I think it was also a bad drought year as well.
Well, they weren't
So
poached though, right?
no, they survived. I think they're still thriving today. The
No, no,
question
no,
is,
not
have
the last set, the one before that.
the original set did not make it?
But they weren't poached. They just
No,
died.
they just died due to dehydration and malnutrition, heat exhaustion, a wide range of physical issues. What was the other thing? I don't know if that specific black rhino population, because it was like 3 individuals, have been, like, reunited with others Maybe not necessarily reunited, but others have been introduced to the population. So I'll have to check on that. So back to what's going on here in Uganda, marking the beginning of a longer process aimed at establishing a viable free-ranging rhino population in Kadipo Valley National Park. I'm not entirely sure if there are elephants over in Kaidipo Valley National Park. I do know that the country of Uganda has seen an increase in the African bush elephant population. The 1980s, there was somewhere around 2,300, and there seems to be 6,300, seems to be the estimate of, or 6,300 bush elephants roaming the country. And then when it comes to hippos, Uganda has one of the largest populations of hippos in sub-Saharan Africa, pushing between 25 to possibly 40,000 hippos, which is insane in some instances due to the size of the country and as well as like just the density of the human population. You have it where Zambia or Zimbabwe further south has a hippo population somewhere between 20 to 30,000 hippopotamuses. And no, in Uganda there are no pygmy hippos. They are restricted to certain areas of Equatorial Guinea, Cameroon, and the Democratic Republic of the Congo, possibly the Republic of the Congo too.
Wait, how big are pygmy hippos?
They don't reach much larger than maybe 6 to 700 pounds, or a little over 300 kilograms. Okay, let's continue. Well, that's interesting view. Not even sure if it's authentic. Okay, somewhere in Kadipo Valley National Park, but there aren't any critters. So Uganda is home to around 300 northern white rhinos, or Ceratotherium simum cotonii, and 400 eastern black rhinos, Dicaros. Okay, I mispronounced the genus for the black rhino. Bicornus michaeli. But these populations were devastated by intense poaching that flourished amid the civil war that began the late 1970s. The last of the country's wild rhinos was killed in 1983. In 2005, a breeding program for rhinos was established at Zaiwa Rhino Sanctuary. Six southern white rhinos, Ceratotherium simum, four from Kenya and two from a sanctuary in the US. What did you have to get two from the US for? I mean, you know what? I guess that's fine. Um, I tend to hope with every single animal that's raised, or single exotic animal, or even ones that are indigenous to North America, that they're raised to be released later into the wild. And unfortunately, in many cases, they're not. But I guess it is good to hear that two were taken from the US and released to this area of Africa. But I guess I would expect certain individuals or white rhinos coming in from different parts of South Africa, Zimbabwe, maybe even Mozambique, or certain individuals that have already been relocated to Kenya. Um, but still good to hear. Were introduced the following year. And by 2023, okay, but that was back in what, 2006. So by 2023, that herd had grown to 42. Whoa. Um, I hope that there were more rhino individuals that were introduced to this population, because that's a very little percentage of genetic variety, according to the sanctuary's website.
And the old adage, they're Alabama rhinos.
Yeah, or yeah, it could be a lot of places. Bashir Hengai, UWA's head of communications. It sounds Indian or Bangladeshian, but okay. Told Mongabe that four rhinos have been translocated from Zaiwa to Kaidapo so far, with four more to follow. Oh, okay. So, like with credit card companies, now they're letting people know the rhinos are moving. Okay. Had like a Transformers sort of flashback. He's on the phone. It's like, I'm in the middle of a war here. Sir, do you have the number? Uh, in January, four southern white rhinos from the sanctuary, two were translocated to Ahai Wildlife Reserve in the West Nile region. The decision to establish rhinos in these protected areas is anchored in Uganda's national rhino conservation strategy, and follows a feasibility assessment undertaken by UWA. Also, when it comes to the lion population over in Uganda, it is slightly increasing. There's around 900 lions over in um well, throughout the country of Uganda. I'm not sure about the amount of prides. I believe Cape Buffalo. There's somewhere around 44 to 45,000 Cape Buffalo in the country. And then when it comes to zebras, they're quite rare. The Burchell's plain zebra subspecies specifically only numbers somewhere around 3,000. So they're not very common. Eland, there could be a few thousand within the country, maybe 10 to 15,000 eland. Common eland, not the giant eland. The authorities says it hopes the animal's reintroduction will help to restore ecological integrity and contribute to national conservation objectives. In addition to creating an additional conservation stronghold for rhinos, Hengai told Mangabe their presence will also support the local economy through increased tourism and conservation related opportunities. Um, yeah, I mean, definitely the rhinos should help with that. Yeah, he looks pretty healthy too. Yeah, I think it's male. He does seem a bit agitated though, as you can see his tail's curled up.
Is he wet or is that
Yeah, it seems that way. But
just has a strange pattern?
yeah, well, I do recall in some instances where they will pour a certain liquid onto the animal's body and then they will paint the certain identification number. But it could simply be um water, but that's a bit of an odd sort of pattern. Seems healthy though. So Robert Aruo, a veterinary specialist who headed UWA's rhino conservation program from 2013 to 2020, agreed that having rhinos at this national park will attract visitors and enhance its conservation value. Yeah, likely will. Ecologically, the white rhinos are grazers, and their large food intakes keep the grasslands in check. You have to be careful with that, and this goes for many species of grazers throughout the world, even historically, well, prehistorically. White rhinos are technically picky grazers. There are certain species of grasses that they feed on. I believe they feed on somewhere between 20 to 30 different species of grasses. And I think this was also from like certain studies from rhinos feeding on certain ecosystems in the country of Mozambique, probably over in Limpopo National Park. Now, you do have different species over in Uganda, slightly different ecosystems. I think Mozambique can be a bit drier depending on where you are, especially adjacent to the Kruger National Park over in South Africa. But they are not going to feed on every single species of grass. And that's where certain other animals like the zebras, the Cape buffalo, and the eland will take over, depending on the specific species of grass. So you cannot necessarily put certain animals into an ecosystem, despite them being indigenous or native to the ecosystem, and expect them to, like in this case with the grass, fully, I guess, create a healthy, just grassland ecosystem. You need other species that also focus on others. You need different species of animals or herbivores in this instance to focus on the other species of grass. He cautioned that there are also potential difficulties, including managing the rhino's health, possible human wildlife conflict with surrounding communities, and the high costs of protecting the rhinos against poachers. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much with every protected area. I was surprised they didn't saw off the horn because it makes them, less appealing to poachers. And it can quickly grow back. I'm not referring to cutting all the way to the root. I mean, just where there's still a decent layer of keratin left, because a rhino's horn is made out of keratin, which is the same substance that your fingers and nails are made out of, or your nails,
Fingernails?
your nails and your hair.
You have some weird fingers.
Um, yeah, well, I don't think they would be mobile. But he said rhino conservation raises the stakes and effort of park management, which in turn helps the protection of other species. The translocation helps us not keep all eggs in one basket and create opportunities to mitigate all the above risks. And guys said the Wildlife Authority has prepared carefully for the translocations. This was a deliberate program with extensive planning undertaken, which included habitat preparation, enhanced security, and veterinary protocols put in place in addition to community engagement. Well, I would assume so. I mean, when moving these animals, you need to have the whole um, move thoroughly planned out. And also, yeah, making taking a look at how the weather is occurring in this specific area, how the rhinos are going to probably adjust, and also tends to help if it's also during like a um, more rainy, or I guess you could just say during the wet season when you're moving them. I think the problem is just comes to overall, I guess, road management because you don't want it where you got the trucks stuck. It's just many roads in Africa. They don't have concrete. That tends to be more of an issue in different parts of like Central Africa, not so much different parts of like East and Southern Sub-Saharan Africa. But in the height of the wet season, it can be pretty bad. Okay, well, this is good to see. Hopefully, they send in some more. I think over in Uganda at the moment, they're already somewhere around 30 to 35 black rhinos, and hopefully we also get an increase with them as well. Not just um, more relocations, but also just the animals reproducing as well. But hopefully they also have a bit of genetic variety. Okay, let's travel to another part of the world. So from
Graham goes, "Hello, I love you. Hello."
rewildingeurope.com, joint efforts drive red deer recovery in the Velebit Mountains. Where could this be? Velebit Mountains. Not familiar with this mountain terrain. Hey, who do we have here? Looks like some healthy red deer. Got one with a collar on. Guessing that's a male or a stag. So in what on earth? In Croatia's Velebit Mountains, collaboration with local hunting associations is essential for scaling up rewilding efforts. Rather than working in isolation, Rewilding Velebit is working with partners on a shared goal: restoring healthy red deer populations across the Velebit Mountains. The release of 30 red deer on 4 hunting concessions since November will help to boost abundance, restore genetic diversity, and support the long term health of wild nature. Um, Well, yeah, I mean, that is a good number to hear with, 30 deer and not just, you know, 8 individuals. Question is how many stags? Probably not. It's probably just a handful. As the rewilding Velvet team worked to replace hunting with wildlife watching across the rewilding landscape, um, you also want hunting too, because that is a natural part of the ecosystem. But if it's too small of a population, then it's completely understandable. They are also encouraging surrounding hunting concessions to adopt a similar approach. Agreements have been signed with all the concessions where red deer have recently been released, helping to establish trust, shared standards, and best practice on issues such as poaching prevention and long term wildlife management. So, when it comes to Croatia, I guess I don't recall the population in general. Adjacent Bosnia and Herzegovina, the red deer population is unknown, which I guess is not too surprising for many things in Bosnia. But when it comes to Slovenia, I believe the country just north of Croatia. No, it might be, yeah, slightly north. I believe there's somewhere around 30 to 35,000 red deer in that country. And in Italy, There's only somewhere around 70,000 red deer. I mean, it has been increasing in recent years, and then also with the adjacent population of people, I mean, that is quite an astounding number. And then you also have over 2,100 wolves in the country of Italy as well. It's also not including like the wild boars in the region. Let's see what else happened. Red deer hunting will stop on all of them until populations have had the opportunity to recover. Oh, okay. Well, that's good to see. We partnered with Rewilding Velvet because we have common interests and goals, says Demir Perkovic of Croatian Force, which manages a concession in central Velebit where 10 deer were released. So I'm guessing throughout different parts of the Velebit Mountains, I guess kind of reminding me of like the high Tetras mountain range of Slovakia, adjacent to southern Poland. They're releasing the deer in different areas, which I guess is good. Um, Probably can help with disease prevention. It's not too large of a group. We both want to see good management and effective conservation leading to healthy wildlife populations. This is good for nature and good for people too. It's probably also to see how well the deer being introduced to these different areas adapt to the different parts of the mountain range. So, rewilding Velebit's work in and around the Velebit Mountains of Croatia is focused on transforming the management of 5 hunting concessions totaling nearly 30,000 hectares. A fresh and, I think 30,000 hectares is like pushing 60,000 acres. A fresh and sustainable approach to wildlife management here, based on wildlife watching rather than the traditional practice of hunting, is supporting a gradual resurgence in the area's spectacular wildlife. Also, I think when it comes to Croatia, there's somewhere around 65 to 70 lynx or Eurasian lynx in the region, which is a very small population, but they are slowly increasing. And I think when it comes to wolves over in Croatia, there's somewhere around 170 wolves, I think spread out over 43 packs in recent estimates. So that's good to see that there's an increase in that population. Let's see. The roe deer population is unknown. So it's supported by a growing range of unique tourism experiences. It is also driving the development of a burgeoning nature-based economy, which benefits local communities. Many of these experiences are available to book on Wilder Places, Rewilding Europe's travel booking platform. With hunting deeply embedded in Croatian culture, that's funny. I think it's embedded in everybody on Earth. Engaging and working productively with the development hunting community is essential to scale up the impact and progression of rewilding efforts. The results of a survey released in 2025 found that most hunters in the Velvet Mountains share many of the goals and views of the rewilding Velvet team, which bodes well for the future. Well, yeah, I mean, even they likely agree that the population needs to skyrocket. I forget that in Europe, you have deer blinds too. It's almost like you're looking at some area of West Virginia or Pennsylvania in this picture over in the countryside. The current red deer population in the Velebit Mountains remains well below its natural level, largely due to historical overhunting. The rewilding Velvet team has now overseen multiple red deer releases, both within and around the rewilding landscape, and further releases are planned in the future. This might be referring to certain releases over in Croatia and this part of the country as well that occurred back in 2023. So now there's even more red deer being relocated to this area. So it's good to see. Red deer were once an important species in parts of the region, but disappeared due to human pressure, says Damir Ugarvkovic, a consultant and concession expert of rewilding velvet. Their return will help to increase biodiversity, preserve genetic diversity, and restore ecological balance, as well as revitalize food chains that support predators and scavengers. Well, the question is, are there any lynx around here? Are there any wolves? Because you don't want the red deer. overgrazing in many instances or over browsing. Same thing for even the rabbits in these areas. Who else? I guess I'm not sure about the otters in this area. I will say there are around 900 brown bears in the
Are
country.
otters known for overgrazing?
Sometimes they munch on cattails, but no, not really.
Wait, literal cattails or the plant?
Well, like the cattail reeds. Oh, yeah, they'll go after cats occasionally. Or like young lynx
Hmm.
kittens. So, it's yeah, they're quite carnivorous. A number of deer released by the Rewilding Velvet team have been fitted with GPS collars. This will give the team insight into seasonal migration and habitat use and should help to improve wildlife management across the landscape. There are certain red deer populations that make extremely or much longer migrations than certain other populations within Europe, especially in different parts of the Czech Republic, Poland, and there are these vast migrations of several hundred individuals or several hundred red deer, um, simply just covering vast crop fields as well as like small riparian forest areas. And some cases they're able to jump the fences pretty well, but probably because they're not very tall when referring to the fences. In addition to the concession in Central Velebit, the Rewilding Velebit team also released red deer in Markovic, Rudine, Verbach, and Verhelovi. These releases are guided by a strong commitment to sustainable deer management, ensuring population recovery continues. We have a management plan that allows for culling, but we are currently restoring to minimal interventions because we have not yet reached our desired population goals.
So we haven't started killing them because there just aren't enough yet. That's
Uh,
the strangest line.
Um, yeah, it's probably also too small a population as well. I would certainly support further releases. The release organized by Rewilding Velvet was a perfect fit for us. You also have to have it where the red deer are like the rhinos over in Africa. They're in good condition. Also, when it comes to the time of year, not necessarily releasing them at a time when they're going through a lot of pressure, like in winter, but it looks like they released them at some time in the winter. Maybe it was early spring, just one of the last snowfalls. Even then, it can be quite harsh, especially on pregnant females, unless the deer that they released, at least the females or the does, were not pregnant. Let's see, where was it? Oh, so the release of red deer is certainly making a difference not only in my area but also in other hunting grounds. It is evident that the population is now rising, which is wonderful because they used to be rare or almost non-existent. Yeah, this specific individual has a very healthy coat. As the ties between rewilding Velvet and local partners continue to deepen, they offer real hope for the future of rewilding in the Velvet Mountains, opening the door to larger scale species recovery, healthier ecosystems, and a renewed relationship between people and nature across this iconic landscape. Oh, yeah, it's a good view. So, uh, oh, it's just rewilding Europe in general. I was wondering if this was who was backing the release of the red deer. It's mentioning the Dutch postcode lottery, Ecological Restoration Fund, Endangered Landscapes and Seascapes Program, Cartier for Nature, Oak Foundation, Enviro Sustain, World Wildlife Fund, Netherlands, and Arcadia.
I thought it was the World Wrestling Federation.
Um, yeah, the otters would definitely probably support that. Okay, it's good to hear. Let's see what's going on in another part of the world. From Yahoo.com, animals are being sucked to death by ticks in Utah with no solution in sight. Yeah, I guess this moose could somewhat agree. Yeah, this is not a healthy moose. I mean,
That's terrible.
looking at his fur patches, I will say in different parts of northeastern United States, especially in different areas of New England, like New York, New Hampshire, Maine, Vermont, what you have had occur is that when it comes to the tick populations, you've had massive reforestation in different areas. And the problem that occurred was that you had it where, especially with the younger trees, and there was also quite a bit of brush with certain invasive species of plants, I think it created a very, preferable habitat for the ticks, so they just boomed in, population, and this is likely what's also occurred in certain areas of Utah, which is interesting because I don't recall Utah being really a massive issue when it comes to, ticks and moose. They're there. I think Colorado, in some instances, they might have been more of an issue, but Utah is a bit strange. There aren't many moose in Utah in general, and they haven't been in Utah for very long. They first started coming back or entering the state somewhere in the late 1800s, around the 1850s or the 1860s. Moose roaming Utah's Wasatch Mountains are facing a brutal threat from annoying little blood suckers. Utah Division of Wildlife Resources researcher Kent Hershey said the moose are being sucked to death by ticks that are draining the massive mammals so severely that some die of malnutrition or must be euthanized. The Division of Wildlife Resources is now trying to determine exactly where and when moose are becoming infested, as warmer winters and low snowpack appear to be helping more ticks survive. No, I think it's just, I mean, yeah, you could say warmer or the certain years that just happen to be warmer can have a more positive impact for the ticks, but it's also it can occur in certain areas where it's just more preferable moist sheltered habitat for the ticks. In many cases that type of habitat is not preferable for most of the other animals in the region. Ticks are animals. Um, more they belong to a certain lineage of arthropods that are more closely related to horseshoe crabs and fleas, as well as spiders, but not necessarily insects.
I didn't know that.
So it's a troubling sign for conservation efforts in the state. Yeah, in fact, there might have been instances where ticks, I'd have to double check, but might have been sucking the blood of dinosaurs, or at least certain Cretaceous species of dinosaurs. So after 140 million years ago. Likely, though, maybe occurring on different mammoths or mastodons back in the Ice Age, as well as Ice Age species of deer. As reported in the Salt Lake Tribune, oh, yeah, it's a good source. Utah's moose population is now a bit under 3,000 animals, above a 2013 low of about 2,600. I've heard that, actually, I think it might be less than 3,000. 3,000, I remember, like, back in 2019, 2020, that was about the population, and then I think there's a bit of an increase, and then recently a decrease, so that's off, but you also referred to the Salt Lake Tribune. The state's 2017 moose management plan said the herd recovered more slowly than expected, and later studies increasingly linked ticks to that problem. As reported by the Tribune, the DWR, Division of Wildlife Resources, began a January study by placing GPS collars on roughly 60 cow, moose, and calves, while also counting ticks to show where infestations occur, which areas may mean fewer tick loads. In an interview with the Tribune, Hershey said, "Just a handful of them isn't a huge deal. Well, they still prefer not to have them on. But some of these animals have thousands of ticks, over 10,000 ticks on them. Yeah, that's really bad.
How do you even get 10,000 of them on you?
They can accumulate in a very small area, and all a moose has to do is just rub against like certain trees, not certain trees, like maybe certain small broken shrubs or um young trees or maybe a tree that just died anyway.
That's not what I
And
meant. I meant, how do they fit that many of them on them?
um, yeah, they just start then somewhat incubating on the moose.
What was the picture you showed me of something that was eating it off an animal?
There was a picture
No,
of
you
a
showed me a
draw.
video
Oh,
where an animal was eating ticks off of another.
oh, the crows. I think over in Australia when I think it was some part of maybe Victoria, more of a drier area. But you had like I think eastern gray wallabies going over to this water trough that had been placed out in some part of the national park during like to help these animals during the dry season. They would come over and drink, and the crows would fly over and simply pick or I guess snatch off several ticks off of these wallabies.
They were huge.
Yeah, there was another animal I thought that came over that, they were feeding off too. Wasn't a wombat. Oh, possibly a numbat? It's not hitting by at least several wallabies, and the crows were just having a feast. But, oh, I think, it might have been certain red kangaroos that came over to drink as well. So, yeah, ticks, different species, but they wreak havoc over in Australia too. So Hershey went on to say that it takes a lot of energy for these moose to replenish the amount of blood that's being sucked out of them. As they lose blood, they also rub their coats raw, trying to get relief, breaking off fur, and leaving themselves poorly insulated against cold weather. For people in the region, the effects are becoming more visible. Hershey said Division of Wildlife Resources has gotten many calls from residents finding moose in terrible condition. In many cases, the animals are so weak they can barely walk, leaving euthanasia as the only option. While tick infestations may seem like a niche wildlife issue, they are a stark reminder of how warming winters can ripple through an ecosystem. Well, it's just these specific years, but it's also what's going on in the ecosystem in general. Lower snowpack and drier conditions do not just change the scenery in Utah's mountains, they can diminish a treasured part of life in the region. Here's the thing when it comes to the mountains, especially the Wasatch Front in Utah, is that depending on where you are, the snow does not last very long in general. You have to get an immense um, accumulation of snow, and even then, just have it where the weather or it's staying a certain temperature for a period of time, but then it just melts for the most part. There are certain areas like the Ashley National Forest over in like northeastern Utah. So this isn't like in the Panhandle area. It's like more adjacent to southwestern Wyoming, but much of the Uintah Wasatch Front can't really maintain snow for too long and on certain slopes. Let's see. So Utah isn't the only place where ticks are killing moose. Well, that's not surprising. It can occur in many areas of the moose's range over in North America. According to Maine Public, of course, you bring up the state of Maine. It's got probably the largest moose population in the lower 48. The the Pine Tree State has the largest moose population in the lower 48 states. I believe there's somewhere around 20,000 moose in Maine, which is pretty decent considering the size of the state. In the winter of 2021, the Maine Department of Inland Fisheries and wildlife collared 70 moose calves, and by the following May, 60 of them had died. Jeez, that sounds like really bad um, woodland habitat as well as marsh. Wonder how much of that was really the ticks. This year could be especially rough in Utah. Hershey warned that a lack of snow may create a huge year for ticks because fewer die off in cold, snowy conditions. I was thinking of moose dying for a second, referring to the ticks. I will say, however, this past winter for Utah, Arizona, I even believe different parts of Oregon, Washington, Idaho, a lot of the American West did not receive a lot of snow. Like it was one of the lower years for snowpacks. So, yeah, it's definitely going to have more of a benefit for the ticks in this instance and just harder on everybody else. So, it's also because the winter, especially over in the western states, they're a large portion of the moisture that the plants receive, and it's only so much in like the later spring months as well as summer and the fall. Well, earlier fall. Utah, you can have snow by um, certain parts of mid-November. So Hershey added, hopefully we can come up with some really good answers and things we can do to help moose out so they're not being sucked to death. That's a bad way to go. Hmm. Okay. Well, this is really unfortunate to hear. I do wonder a bit about what's going on over in Maine, but same goes for the rest of New England. Despite there being slightly different habitats, there are large portions of New England where the ecoregions or the ecosystems are pretty much the same, from certain parts of Maine down to certain areas of Massachusetts and I believe even Connecticut, which is very interesting. Okay, let's go over to the final news from mymodernmets.com. Wild cougar family spotted in Minnesota for the first time in over a century. This is really good to hear. I think this guy is not wild. Let's keep going. For more than a century, cougars in Minnesota occupied a space somewhere between ecological memory and modern folklore. Although hikers, hunters, and wildlife enthusiasts occasionally reported sightings or captured in indistinct trail camera images, researchers lacked definitive evidence that the elusive predators had successfully reproduced within the state. That uncertainty has now shifted dramatically. Researchers in northern Minnesota, guessing also as part of the Voyager's Wolf Project, recently documented trail camera footage of a female cougar accompanied by multiple kittens, providing the first confirmed evidence of a reproducing cougar population in the state in more than 100 years. The Minnesota Department of Natural Resources announced the discovery, which has generated a widespread interest among wildlife biologists, conservationists, and animal enthusiasts. I will say, though, when it comes to cougar populations, there are certain numbers over in South Dakota. I don't know the approximate estimate. There have been more sightings over in the state of Iowa, and there are probably some around 8,000 cougars at least over in the state of Montana. I think it's a bit of a guess when it comes to Wyoming, considering they can be quite spread out. Um, I'd say at least somewhere around 5 to 7,000 cougars within the state of Wyoming. And then North Dakota, they're also seen as well, despite there not being necessarily a lot of preferable habitat. But with seeing this in Minnesota, this probably means that there are others that are reproducing. The footage emerged in late March near Voyagers National Park. This is over in north central Minnesota, so just northwest of the Superior National Forest. After researchers positioned trail cameras beside a deer carcass to monitor scavenger activity. Rather than documenting the expected wolves or bobcats, the cameras captured a far more consequential scene. A mother cougar appeared alongside three kittens as the animals moved together through the snow covered forest landscape. So she had three kittens. That's really good to hear. Scientists estimate the kittens to be approximately 7 to 9 months old. Whoa! She's doing a really good job when referring to the mother, um, considering she has three and they're already this old, suggesting they were born during the previous fall. I'm guessing wolves are probably not too much of an issue in this area. While solitary cougars have intermittently traveled through Minnesota in recent decades, biologists identify this footage as the first verified evidence of cougar reproduction in the state since the species largely disappeared from the Midwest during the early 20th century. I also wonder if this is occurring over in adjacent Wisconsin. We do know in the upper peninsula of Michigan that there is a female cougar with cubs, and they're probably slightly older than these cubs. Um, but they were also found twice in a row, or at least twice in the same year. So the recordings provide an unusually intimate glimpse into the behavior of one of North America's most elusive predators. The kittens feed beside their mother, investigate their surroundings, and interact with one another in ways that mirror the social play behaviors observed in domestic felines. Well, another thing when it comes to cougars is they are technically the most social species of wild cat on Earth. There are different
Wait, social with us or social with each other?
no, social with each other. There's different footage from trail cameras, especially over in California, and even adjacent to certain somewhat urban areas, but even the more rural regions too, where stranger male cougars will come over to a carcass that a female and her cubs are feeding on, and just starts feeding on the carcass with them. Like there's barely any conflict. They're they're quite tolerant of each other. And, well, what's another thing? Yeah, I think that's just, it's a big question as to why that occurs. They're almost like the polar bears to an extent of cats, except female polar bears and their cubs do not want to interact with a stranger male, even if it's a cub or, well, one like a 2 or 3-year-old that just left its, mother and siblings. If it's the male that's the father of the cubs, then she likely is tolerant of that individual. But, with cougars, it's very odd. Not something you see with most mammals. So researchers monitored the cougar family through several hours of trail camera footage, allowing for an extended observation rarely achieved in the wild. Oh, interesting. I haven't heard of that before. Several hours of the cougars just in front of the trail camera. I'm guessing for the most part they were resting. According to the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources, most cougar sightings documented in the state over the past 2 decades involved young males dispersing eastward from western populations in states such as North Dakota, South Dakota, and Nebraska. I forgot about those. Well, not necessarily forgot about those cougars over in the state of Nebraska, but it's just not a large population. Maybe there's somewhere around 2 to 200, 250 cougars in the whole state. Um, but I think the last time I checked, the estimate was still somewhere around 100 to 150. I just thought for the amount of time that had passed and for the supposed reproduction progress that there would be much more. So maybe what you had happen is that some decide to just move north to South Dakota or head south to Kansas, back to let's see, Colorado. I mean, yeah, maybe to certain areas of eastern or central Colorado. Female cougars seldom travel comparable distances, making the presence of a mother with kittens especially significant. The discovery suggests that cougars may gradually begin reestablishing a breeding population within the region. Yeah, I think like the same thing will occur over in the upper peninsula of Michigan, as well as certain areas of northern Wisconsin. Even so, wildlife experts remain cautious about characterizing the sighting as evidence of a full scale population recovery. Cougar kittens face substantial environmental pressures, including severe winters, predators, habitat fragmentation, and vehicle collisions. Nevertheless, the footage represents a major milestone for researchers who have spent years monitoring Minnesota's northern forests for indications of the species' return. So, for many observers, the discovery carries an almost mythic quality. Cougars once vanished from the region entirely, receding to the distant history of the upper Midwest ecosystems. Now, through the quiet vigilance of a trail camera hidden deep within the forest, the new generation of wild cougars has re entered public view. Uh, Thought there was going to be like a picture. Should we click on it? Can we not?
There isn't anything.
That's strange.
Is it? Oh,
Hey. Wow. They look really healthy. Yeah, so I'm guessing this is some point in the winter. I'm guessing they cached the, deer carcass in this specific area, so someone buried it. It's kind of like what a chipmunk or squirrel will do with nuts. Any carnivores, wolves, bears, lions will occasionally do it as well. Tigers. So yeah, the female seems to be healthy too. See 2 cubs. Wonder where the 3rd
I
one
think I
is.
saw a third one.
He just seems to be munching on the carcass in the background, somewhat. Yeah, he's got a piece of fur in his mouth. Oh, there he is. Yeah, wow.
They are so fluffy.
It is interesting because cougars are very spotted when they're first born, almost like something between a leopard and a jaguar, but still their own distinct coloring or pattern. And then as they reach 2 to 3 months, it gradually disappears.
What's it eating?
I think it's a deer carcass. It's just munching on like the vertebrae area. It's also probably somewhat frozen. Okay, is there anything else? Oh, okay. Well, um, thanks for joining. And for Prehistoric to Present, my name is Ethan. This is Creature Guide Live Daily News. And we are streaming on both Rumble, YouTube, and Kick. I guess, you know what? Happy International Mountain Lion or Cougar Day. And remember that nothing is better than all animals all the time.